Hey guys, welcome to the AFC Podcast. We are back, still going strong. 3 episodes. I've changed some things up here. On my end, I'm now in Brooklyn. But don't worry, we're still doing the Astoria Filmmakers Club podcast. I'm Jim Galizia.
I'm Victoria Fragnito. Today on the show, we are going to have our day player, Lena Lansky. She is an AD and producer. We'll talk to her about her upcoming film, A Nightmare Wakes, that you can watch right now on Shudder, and her film of choice, The Neon Demon.
The Neon Demon. That's a cool title. Just credit to the title itself. It sounds cool, and then the fact that you call it The Neon Demon, and then everything in all the movie posters is like super neon. It's just designed really cool. Very cool lighting. I like it already. And then I watched it. And then I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that more. We'll get into detail with when we get with Lena. But how are you, Victoria? How's life? What's new?
Well, I got my first vaccination yesterday. Hey, I can't really move my arm.
Oh, no. They're going to take the arm, but at least you won't get COVID.
Yay. It's the sacrifices we make.
You're like, hi.
Hey, everybody.
I definitely don't have COVID, but I also have one arm. I'm sure your arm will be fine. You said that happens when you get flu shots too?
Yeah, I had a really bad not like allergic reaction, like it's not like I couldn't breathe or anything, but I had a lot of pain at a flu shot injection like 2 years ago. So like this isn't new for me. This tends to happen when I get injections.
Okay. They say too that the vaccinations, which one did you get?
Moderna.
Yeah, I think my mom got the Moderna as well, I think. And I think when she got the second one, she felt a little sick the next day. A lot of people are saying they get a little sick the next day, but it's one day and then they're good.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about the second dose is where for Moderna is where you really feel it. So I'm gonna prepare. I'm gonna have soup ready in the house. I'm gonna have video games ready to play, my blanket, my PJs. That's it.
See, all I heard was video games and my brain was like, cool. You don't need food. Whatever.
Who needs food?
There was a kid that played World of Warcraft back in the day, and he died because his character doesn't eat food. So he didn't either. So make sure you eat food if you're going to play video games all day. Hopefully you don't get that sick, though, when you take your second vaccination.
Yeah, I'm hoping not, but I'm prepared in case I do.
Yeah, a lot of people are just getting tired, but whatever. Healing the world. Movie theaters are reopening, and that'll be cool. Everybody's going to have little vaccination bracelets that say, I'm vaccinated, and then they'll be like, great, here's your movie ticket. Feel free. Go in. They should do that. They should say, here, we'll give you a free movie ticket. This is how AMC bounces back. Boom, just came up with it. They come out with an AMC bracelet. And if you're wearing the bracelet, it's a free movie ticket. It also means you've been vaccinated. You get the movie ticket when you get your second vaccination. Free movie ticket, get vaccinated. AMC gets a bunch of people in their theater, and they're all vaccinated people. Boom. Just fixed
That's
it.
$1 million idea right there.
You're welcome, AMC. Take it for free. You can have it. Just let me see movies again. That's all I want.
In a theater.
That's what I'm excited for, is to finally, I don't know what movie will be my first back in the theater, but I know Marvel came out and they said Black Widow, they're not trying to do the straight to Disney Plus thing for that. They're saving it. And I think they can get away with that too, because Marvel has a problem with movies being chronological, because they're kind of stuck in that structure of each movie leads to the next movie, leads to the next movie. Black Widow is one of the first ones in a while that isn't influencing future projects because it takes place in the past.
Yeah.
So it's something that you can say, oh, this can come out whatever. Doesn't really matter when it hits theaters. So you can move it. But the other movies aren't going to happen too, because they take place in all these different weird time spots. Like they have to happen in a certain order. So they're kind of in a weird box in terms of like when they can put movies out. But if Black Widow's the next one, that'll probably be the first movie I see in theaters, but I don't know when.
I don't know when, and I know you're going to be very upset when I say this, but I feel like I'm kind of superhero movied out. I your face says it all. I feel like it's so oversaturated at this point that it's hard for me to get excited about these releases. I know people do. And even with like WandaVision, I haven't watched it. Everyone's telling me to. I have literally no desire to, despite how into it other people are and how amazing they say it is. I'm sure it is. I feel like I'm done for a bit. I need a break. It's just been so much.
Well, your opinion's valid, but it's wrong. But also that's fine. I mean, I understand it too, because superhero movies, there is so much of it that it becomes like, all right, oh my God, they're just like cranking these out. It's an amazing thing. The fact Marvel's cranking out these shows, they haven't faltered at all in terms of the shows that are hitting Disney Plus.
Yeah.
They're all on schedule, even with COVID. They hit on schedule. They're like delayed because of COVID originally, but now they're still cranking them out. They're probably the only things that are coming out within the next 6 months. So I'm excited as fuck, because what else is there? There's older movies that I haven't seen before, like The Neon Demon. But besides that, WandaVision still hitting Disney Plus. It is great. It's a trip. It's almost over. So maybe in a couple weeks you'll, get the urge. But have you been like watching other stuff or doing other stuff while you're quarantined and locked up?
Well, I feel really kind of lucky at this point right now, because everything that was put on hold for 2020 seems to be starting to really take off. So like I've talked in the last couple podcasts about the roadblocks that my husband's film hit, but now we're really in the huge like pre-production stages. We have a new director, which is awesome. It's actually Brandon Ford Green, who we had as a guest on our podcast in season 1.
Hey.
So he's directing the film, and we're doing a lot of cool stuff in involving the cystic fibrosis community and trying to get them to rally behind the film before we start really doing any sort of crowd fundraising or anything like that. So there's been a lot of work happening for that, and for my play that got pushed off from last year as well. So I haven't really had time, which is a really weird thing to say during the pandemic. Like I've been busy with projects that I didn't think were going to happen. Like they were kind of just hanging in the balance, waiting for COVID to be over. But we're very cautiously optimistic that these things are actually going to happen later in the year.
Well, now you're kind of in a position where there's nothing else to do but make it happen. You can't work, so you might as well just work on the thing that you want to do. Because
exactly.
a year ago, 2 years ago, you'd be like, oh, I just don't have time to make this play happen, or I don't have time to make this film happen because I have to pull 5 shifts in a row at my restaurant. And now you're like, I have to pull 5 nights in a row watching WandaVision. You're not feeling it. I get it. Whatever. You're wrong, but okay. You have time now to like work on the cool project. And I feel like too, everything's reopening. So now's the time to like ramp it up. And I just moved. So I've been my brain couldn't I couldn't do anything else. I was like, I'm moving. I was
there.
The 2-3 days before I moved, I was in my old apartment just pacing, because I was packed and ready to go. And I was just like, all right, what else do I have to do? What else? I couldn't like just sit down and write or organize myself. I just couldn't do it until I was in here and all my shit was everywhere it needed to be.
Yeah.
Then I was like, good, now I can focus. And now I'm finally in a position where I'm like ready to try to get my project moving again. But
it's also like pandemic brain and pandemic fog and all of this, this fatigue that we're all feeling. Even though you have all the time in the world, you don't always feel productive, and that is fine. That is completely okay. You're allowed to take your time, and you're allowed to, not be productive during this time, because we're all dealing with this huge amount of stress and anxiety about the world in general, let alone your little corner of it. But it feels like with the vaccinations coming out and being more readily available to people, and with things slowly starting to open up, there's this glimmer of hope that's kind of alleviated some of that anxiety from me to the point where I can actually feel productive. I don't think I would have been in a good position like a couple months ago to really get working on any of this stuff. But now I'm feeling a lot better and a lot more hopeful that this stuff will actually happen. So there's the motivation there that wasn't there for months during the pandemic. Like at the beginning, I feel like the only thing I could really handle was this podcast. Like that was literally like the only thing I felt like I could do.
This was when you put yourself together. You were like a total mess. And then you were like, all right, I'm going to record the podcast and look fine. And then
yeah, just for this one day that we shoot the podcast, I'm going to put makeup on and that's it.
Yes. And then that was it. And then, so you're telling me that as soon as there was a new president, suddenly there's hope?
Oh, maybe.
Maybe the timing you just laid out kind of aligns with that a little bit. I guess your mentality. I couldn't care less who's sitting in the White House. I really couldn't. Put The Rock in the White House. That's the only person I think should be there. He wakes up at 4 a.m. He's energetic all day. Everybody likes him. And he's a multicultural bonanza. I mean, I couldn't place his... what race is he? You don't know. He's everything. He's all of us in one man. Also, he's ripped. So if anyone wants to mess with us, we'll just send The Rock. We don't have to have an army. We have The Rock.
We now have this is a new segment of the podcast called Politics by Jim. And
yeah. The Rock and his vice president, Tom Hanks.
Actually, I think that's a really great pairing. I think I'm on board with this. I'm on board with this.
Yep.
Well, here, why don't we
there's no way to segue.
That.
You can't
no, there is no
anything.
way. So let's just bring Lena on and let's talk to her.
Yes, we're going to show a clip. We're going to show the trailer for A Nightmare Wakes, which is now on Shudder. You can go watch it, check it out, where Lena was the assistant director. Then we're going to bring Lena on and chat with her.
If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear.
Claire, don't run, sister.
You found me. Percy. What do you think of my not-so-humble abode? Byron does throw the best parties. Someone tell me a ghost story. Scare us. I wish to tremble.
It's the tale of a monster. Something dead, yet also alive. I feel like it's a story. My story.
You need to enter the deepest and darkest corners of your imagination.
Frankenstein.
I never knew you had such darkness in you.
It's already there. I must simply unleash it.
Mary, what's happened?
What's wrong with her? Is it serious? I need rest.
Could you not pause the writing for a bit?
You wish to stop these words. Why?
I have a growing feeling that it is not safe.
You are my creator, but I am your master. We can fix this.
There's nothing left to fix.
Now it is the innocent who will suffer. My novel! That was my world!
You're a monster, Mary.
I am not mad. I choose this.
Doesn't sound very scary yet.
It is.
All right, that was a clip from A Nightmare Wakes, where Lena Lansky is here, and she was the assistant director on that project. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Oh man, what would you like to know?
I mean, how did you get involved with it? Or even how did you get involved in the industry in the first place? Tell us about what you do, who you are. Tell us everything.
Sure. Okay. So I am a non-union first AD. I also production manage, and on occasion I produce where I can. And more, I would say, not creative producing, more like logistical producing, because I know that like there's always a gray area when it comes to producing and what producers actually do. But yeah, I didn't go to film school. I was working for the MTA like years ago, like 5 years, and there was a media department. I started kind of hosting their show. They had a show, Transit News Magazine, that was like running for 20 years. And I got like my first taste of like media communications, and I was like, man, I really like this. And I spent like 3 or 4 years, like I bought a camera, I started doing photography, but I was never ADing. I like was not doing PA work. I had PA'd one time on a short for like 7 days, and that was as much PA work that I had. But I took very quickly to a lot of things, and I was just shooting my own stuff. And so I started like my own LLC, like, and then I was like, I'm done. Like, I just need to take the leap and go into the industry. And I had no connections. I didn't know anything. I did know a chick who I don't really talk with her anymore, but she was like, I think you'd be a really good AD. And so in December of like 2016, I applied for the DGA trainee program. They accepted my application, and then I took the test, didn't pass. I suck ass when it comes to like tests. I'm really shitty. And so I did not pass through, but I quit my job, and then I was like, cool, I'm just gonna figure it out. And then when I did the DGA trainee application, a director that I know was like, hey, I'll give you a referral, like a reference, et cetera, et cetera. And she did that. And then like 3 months later, she's like, I have a feature coming up. Do you want to AD it? And that was how I got into ADing. And that's like a huge leap, because I mean, to AD, it takes a lot. It's a big responsibility on set. And so for me to, I was like, are you sure? And she's like, we'll work together. And it was a very warm environment because I knew her. And so although I AD'd that, looking back on it, the way I AD'd it would not be how I would AD now at all. So, but because of her allowing me that space, that's kind of how I got into it. And then little by little, I started like doing producing and production managing, et cetera, et cetera. And that's pretty much what I do now. How I got into Nightmare Wakes, it was like a cold, rainy September evening, and I got an email from Devin Shepard. And she's like, hey, you sent us a resume like months ago. We're looking for an AD. We have a feature. It's starting production, like principal, in like 10 days. And we need an AD ASAP. And I was like, holy shit. And so she was the producer. She connected me to Nora Uncle, who's the writer and director of Nightmare Wakes. We spoke, we got along really well. And then 2 days later, I had started a schedule, I'd broken everything down, pretty much done what I needed to do. And then I had to leave in 2 days to go up to Cooperstown for a month and a half. So it was kind of insane. But I did a schedule in like 3-4 days, and I worked for like 10 days in pre-pro with the DP, with the director, with the producers, with the production designer, to kind of figure out how we would kind of maneuver the schedule. And then we went right in. So it was kind of nuts, but it was the best set. I would say that it's one of the best sets that I've ever been on, honestly, in like my time freelancing as an AD, because you get on sets and there's a camaraderie with everybody, and it's always fun and cool. But like, this was a step above camaraderie. Like, it felt like we were super I don't know. It almost felt, it was weird how connected everybody was.
I think for projects like that, when you're away from home and you're gone for like 6 weeks, you said it was a month and a half. Like, it was,
yeah.
You kind of have to get along with everybody, so that immediately it's almost the same feeling as like when I went to college. I moved away. I just moved into the city from Long Island, so not super far. But I was all of a sudden living with total strangers. Yeah. But when you do that, no one treats you like a stranger, because they're all strangers too. So immediately it's almost like a second family, at least for the 6 weeks, and then, or however long you're there.
This is the weird thing. It's like, this felt like a step above that, because we all still, like, afterwards, like, we were still meeting up and talking and hanging out. Like, we really felt like we were like we became friends. Like, it was like, holy crap. I mean, put it like this. I worked on that 2 years ago. I'm currently roommating with Nora. Like, it's kind of like that kind of like situation where you're like, holy shit, like, we've, these are like actual friendships that have like happened because of it. So it was a really dope shoot. Like, it had its stresses, awesome. Like any like film.
You never know too, when you book a gig and they're like, yeah, in 10 days we're gonna be gone for 6 weeks. You're like, this could go so bad. This could go really bad. But it's good that it went really well, and the trailer looks awesome. Is A Nightmare Wakes out yet, or is it still?
It is. Yeah, it's been on Shudder for like the entire month of February. So anybody who can get a free trial of Shudder for 7 days and take a look at Nightmare Wakes,
or pay for Shudder,
or pay for Shudder. Yeah,
free ad for Shudder here, but Shudder seems like the horror spot, and a lot of the stuff on your resume is horror. Right?
Yeah, a lot of what I do is in the horror-esque kind of psychological thriller genre. I love horror genre, and I do like psychological thrillers. And I do like the macabre. Like I don't know what it is. Like I think in another life I want to be like a mortician or something, or like an embalmer. Like honestly.
Well, I'm coming at this, I'm more from the acting perspective, and my background is mostly theater. I'm starting to get more into films. So I'm a little ignorant on like how someone would find a job as an AD, like how people find, especially like freelancing and non-union. That's got to be a little different than if you're, higher up on the food chain in the union and all of that stuff. How does all that work?
It definitely is. I mean, ultimately, like most of the industry, it's like very referral based. It's who you know, and building those relationships with the directors and the producers and the production managers and the production coordinators who are like, hey, I really like you as an AD. Even on that, like even in that realm, it's like, it would be like, for me, I think it's better to have more relationships with directors, but in the non-union world, a lot of the directors that are out there are working with incredibly low budgets, and because of that like issue, they're not consistently working all the time. And so it's hard to, get gigs primarily with the directors that you get along with the most. And so you have to have, you have to depend on other people to kind of come in. Otherwise, it's just like, Mandy, staff me up, Facebook, pages and stuff like that have stuff that come up on like, hey, we need an AD or a production manager or producer. And you make your shot, you send the resume and you say, hey, and you hope that people are liking, because most of the time what I see is like, if on Facebook you say messaged, people that are in the same group be like, and that maybe might give you an up, because like you notice that other people are giving you a vote of confidence.
I have a few friends that were all in the same Facebook groups, and whenever one of them replies in a comment, first of all, I'm like, shit, now if I apply for that job, I look like a jerk because I'm trying to steal it from my friend. But I always try to like and say like +1 for this person. But there's one guy who's like always faster than me, and he always replies to all the cooler gigs. Yeah. And I'm like, crap, he's so quick. I don't know how he does. He's like working on it. But that's the way to do it, because I have Mandy and Staff Me Up as well, and half of the jobs I get sent for those are not things that I would ever do, and then the other half is like very specific. Like they'll ask for like, you need to have this camera, this exact setup, you need to have a car, you need to have the next 9 weeks free. It's that instantaneous, you need everything. And sometimes it's just like, oh, I don't have a 360 camera.
Yeah, I would say on Mandy and Staff Me Up, it's like a hit or miss, honestly. And I rarely see AD jobs. And like Mandy had sent like a questionnaire like a month or so ago, and they're like, what are how likely are you going to continue to use Mandy? Do you have any suggestions for us? And I was like, yeah, stop putting low budget bullshit on fucking Mandy, especially for AD work. I saw some shit for like AD, get catering, do like things that have nothing to do with being an AD, and they were like giving $75 a day, and I'm like, why is this even on Mandy? Put this shit on Craigslist. Like, this is not where this should be. Like an AD, it's a hard job to be an AD, and it's like, we shouldn't be getting paid $75 fucking dollars.
Or at least nobody should build within Mandy or Staff Me Up a like filter that says like, oh, if you're trying to pay $75 a day, I don't even want to hear about it. Like at least hit like the minimum, because a production assistant legally is supposed to make $210 for a day's work minimum. That's minimum wage. So it's like, you're asking me to work for a third of minimum wage. It's crazy.
Thank you. And even like, like the 250, 275 for a PA, it's like, if you really divide it by 12 hours and like 13, 14 hours, which is really how long they actually are working, if not 16, 17, they're not really making a lot of money. And it's like, come on, guys, $75 a day for your production, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, my husband's at the beginning of very, very, very early pre-production stages of his film and trying to get people on board for that. And one thing that they are all in agreement on from the director down is like, we just want referrals for people. We don't want to go through Mandy's. We don't want to do any of that because they've all had nightmare experiences of getting people through there. So it's very different from the theater world, extremely different from the theater world. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, referrals are big. It's like, it's going from like regular 9-to-5 jobs to like the filmmaking world. Like even our resumes are very different. Like on like a standard 9-to-5, like in a corporate place, it's like you have to explain what you did and your responsibilities and like how you helped the company. Here it's like, here are my credits. Like I have like 50, 60 credits of something. Like that should be enough to show you that I can do the job, you know. And referrals of like, this person's great, and people just kind of go like, great, let's have a conversation. And you have one conversation, it's like, can you do the job? Great. Like, thanks. So yeah, I might have something coming up in April, but it's still kind of up in the air. It's possible confirmation I have to give like mid-March as to whether or not I'm going to be able to do it. But it's like a short, it's like 4 days, and it wouldn't even be in New York City. I would have to be traveling. And so that's kind of like an issue because of COVID restrictions and everything. And so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but it's been a bit difficult with COVID to get gigs, honestly. It's been super rough, I would say, because I'm not really seeing anything. And like with so many productions in general, especially in the indie level, don't have money. And it's like COVID is incredibly expensive, you know, testing every couple of days, PPE, getting a CCO, and like, it's a lot. And, you know.
Yeah, that's a whole new expense. Yeah. And even productions that are like looking like way into the future, like you still like, it's not way into the future, but like in the fall when people are like, are we going to be back to normal or not? You know, you still have to budget all of that COVID stuff in so that you're not blindsided by it if you do actually need it when you get there.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I mean, I know like a year ago when this whole thing started, everybody was like, the movie theater industry is fucking done. No one's ever going to go to a movie again. I just thought it was like so ridiculous because I was like really? Come on. And although people just kind of go to like the extreme of like, that's it. And like, sure enough, what am I noticing now? Like, oh, now in theaters, like they're slowly opening it back up because it's like, it's entertainment. People need it. And for those who are willing to risk it, they'll go, you know, which obviously is not that great. Like we should just be careful, but eventually like we will 100% be back at the movie theaters and like doing what we were doing before. So yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, everyone get vaccinated. Everyone get vaccinated so I can go see Avengers movies again. That's all I want. Well, I want to see A Nightmare Awakes on the big screen, but I'll settle for Shudder for now.
Nice.
But yeah, so me and you, we met on the set of Early Bird, where you basically showed up on set and you were like I don't want to say you were the mom of the set because Isaac's mom was also kind of there, but you showed up and you were like, guys, none of what you're doing makes sense. Let me show you the right way, how to schedule everything. And you like made it all logistically make sense and happen. And usually I do that a lot of the times too, because a lot of the productions I work for, they're people that they're like, just we want to film it, and they don't understand the work that goes into building the schedule and storyboarding and planning out how long things take. And I was director of photography for that, so I was just like had no time to worry about any of it. I was just like, I'm just here to film it. That's where I have to focus. So you showed up and you kind of like helped make it all happen, which was cool. So thanks.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was, you know, like it was a fun shoot. I will say that I did enjoy myself. It was just very stressful because there was nobody in production but myself and Isaac, you know? And so a lot of it just kind of fell on like me. Yeah, exactly, the director. And so it was a bit nutty because like in pre-production it was just him and I, and we were working with 2 other individuals like in Syracuse who were part of this like program for the short. And there was a lot of convoluted things that were happening with the finances that was just driving me and Isaac off the wall. And they were super helpful, like the other producers and stuff, but we really like took the reins. And I think if we would have had more access to funding, they would not have really been a part of it at all. Like we would have just needed to kind of hit like, hey, here's an email, can you help us with this little thing, and then let's go do our own thing. But then when production started, yeah, like it was, I remember that first day at the diner, and then, you know, in the morning, it was like some things were happening. I was like, I don't know what's going on here, guys.
Isaac's pretty good too. We had him on the podcast. I think it was episode 13, I want to say. First season of the podcast, Isaac was on. He's always good. I've worked with him a few times, and he always plans to like have an extra half an hour of just like to get there, you know, like he always plans that extra time, but it's never like it'll take 20 minutes to get there and it'll take 30 minutes to shoot it. It's always just like, I'm going to leave an extra hour of window of time because I don't know what's going to happen, but we can fix it in that amount of time, which is really playing it safe. And, you know, it's, I think that's like building a schedule in like the simplest way possible. Like we'll just leave as much blank space in here just in case, which is cool. But having people that know how to actually build a schedule and how long it takes to do things on a film set is super important. So I mean that it makes that job super crucial.
No, 100%, because I think like, you know, when you do it enough times, you just sort of, you already understand how certain things are going to go. Like, you know, when I first started, if you were like, how long is it going to take to set up a Dana dolly? I'd be like, I don't know, I need to figure that out. But like, now I'm like, okay, Dana, great. That doesn't worry me. You know what I mean? Like, great, a Dana dolly, cool, 15, 20 minutes, blah, blah, maybe even 5 minutes, depending on how fast they can fucking put that shit on the sticks or whatever. The pipes, I don't know what the hell they're called, but yeah. But yeah, like ultimately it's like you kind of get a feel and understanding of how long things should actually take, because people underestimate how long things are actually going to take. So everyone's like, no, we'll have the time, but they don't always consider it's not about the actual scene. Sometimes it's getting to it. You know, the blocking, the lighting, the rehearsal, anything that happens in between, last look, something comes up, this happens, that happens, and not taking that into account, that all that extra time before you actually do start recording does take up massive amounts of time. And so you don't really get as much time as you think you would, primarily because of all that, like all day constant block, light, rehearse, shoot, block, like all over and over again. So yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves when I first got into the industry and I started to work as a camera assistant more, where my job was really like putting the camera together, putting the gimbals together, and like help setting things up. Once I had a grasp on how long things would take, and like I was working on a shoot where every day we built the camera, and every day it took like 10 minutes because we had to build it on a gimbal, balance it, and it just took 10-15 minutes, nothing too crazy. And every day someone would come upstairs and say, can you be good in 5 minutes? And every day I'd be like, still no, it's still going to take 10-15 minutes to balance the camera the way it every morning. It's going to take this long. And it was one of my biggest pet peeves, because people always show up and they're like, need it in 2 minutes. And it's like, it takes 10. So it's going to be 10. And they're like, can you do it in 5? And I'm like, this isn't like, we're not negotiating. It takes time to set it up. So when there's no time appropriately given, it's awful.
Oh, it's absolutely awful. Like that's why in the pre-production process and on set, like as an AD, in pre-pro, I'm always talking to like the departments to be like, how much time do you need? Look at the schedule that I have proposed. Do you think you're going to have enough time? And it's not just the strip board and the shooting schedule. It's like the daily schedule. What are our days going to look like? When is call? When are we done? When do we have lunch? When are we doing this? When are we doing that? And every time that's why like in pre-pro, it's like, it's crazy for me, because I'm having to talk to all the departments and being like, what do you think? And some departments are really chill and they already know. And other departments like, I don't know what to tell you. We have to figure it out when we get on set. And it's like, I'm not asking you to give me a direct 100% time. I need like a general, because I need to work with you. And being on set, you can't tell certain departments how much time they have. Like as an AD, you as the DP know how much time you need in your department more than I do. I can just give you a basis of like, hey, we need to do this in like an hour. You figure out how you're going to get that 10 minutes in, but then understand that we're going to have less time to shoot because of that. And then the director knows and everybody else knows. And it's always this kind of like, you always want to I always like to work with the departments. Like you have to be like, is this enough time for you? Because if a head of department says, I need an hour, they need an hour. sometimes you have to be like, listen, we don't have a fucking hour. Like, can you do this shit in 45 fucking minutes? Like, can you try? Like, please do something for me. And that's when they've, grown to like you as a person, and they see that you're really trying, and they'll try to finagle something around that. But if they need it, they need it. And there's nothing you can do about it. You got to give the departments the time that they need, because it's their work on screen too. You don't want as the DP to fuck up anything, because you're going to waste even more time if you didn't fucking set the gimbal correct. You're going to break the fucking camera, break the fucking gimbal, and who knows? And you're going to waste even more time having to redo something that you could have just done in the first place. Right.
Yeah.
So
one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I started investing in camera equipment was, someone said, you should just spend the money so you don't have to keep spending small amounts of money. In that, like, if you bought a light and you bought like the cheapest light you could get because it's a light, then it doesn't really do what you need it to do. And then it breaks because it's cheap and it falls apart. And you just have to keep investing small amounts of money, and you keep trying to get the cheaper version or the cheapest version, and you keep getting crappy shit. But if you take the time and you invest into it and put the money towards it, and usually sometimes it's not money, sometimes it's like, take the time and do it right is really the answer. So I mean, that kind of can be spread across everything. I'm sure the same can be said for acting too, when you're like, let me actually take the time and memorize my lines, because that'll derail the whole day if an actor doesn't know their lines.
Yeah. I've seen it happen before. And I was assistant directing a production for a stage production of South Pacific, and the lead actor was way too big for his britches. He had understudied the lead role on Broadway. So when he did it at our regional theater, he was like, I know this role. And I was like, meh, this is a different production, so you have to do it right. And he didn't memorize his lines. Like, he thought he still had it memorized, and we're like, technical elements and the technical elements, and he's calling, and you don't do that at that stage. Like, that's just not a thing. And I can't imagine when it comes to on a shoot of having everything timed out so specifically, and all of these moving pieces and these elements. It's like this giant complicated jigsaw puzzle that you guys have to put together. And something like that could just derail the whole thing, and then mess up days and days and days and days and days beyond that. Mm-mm.
Yeah, because it's like a set of dominoes. If one day falls apart and the whole day is kind of ruined or something. Like we had a day on Early Bird where it started raining, and Isaac was like, I guess we just quit. Like, I guess we'd all just go home. Like, he was like done. He was like beaten down at that point. And it was like the third day or something. I forget what it actually was, but it was like gonna domino. We could see the domino effect of it delaying everything that we had planned out meticulously. And it was just like, oh, this is gonna kill it. And sometimes it's something as simple as rain. It's something as simple as an actor just not knowing their lines. Who knows what it is, but when you plan it out so meticulously and then a small thing derails it, it's terrible.
Yeah, I remember that day. I remember that. But like, the thing is this, me and Isaac had this conversation in pre-pro, and I'm like, do you understand that majority of your film is exterior and what this means for us? Like, we only have these couple of days, and it's like, with the budget, it's like we couldn't do a pickup day. Like, it had to happen in the 4 days that we did the shoot. And
especially because you're away. Being away from your home, like, you can't just like stay an extra day. You get a certain amount of days to do it.
Exactly. And like, we had a substantial budget for this. It was like a $40,000 budget short, which is not little for a short. And it was like, it's one of those things where you're kind of like, man, like, even with that money, it's incredibly short for those 4 days. It's like, it's just super tight. But like, I remember being in the production, the PO, by myself, and everybody was like under the tent, and it was raining. And I remember, like, on walkie, like, somebody was like, hey, Lena, it's pouring out here. I was like, and I sat there and I was like, I don't know what the hell to do. And like, I got out and I walked all the way out there, and I just see the entire crew under the tent, and like, it's like pouring rain, and they look like it felt like like they were like refugees or something, like under a tent, and like they like the bus just drove off. And I was so sad, and I was like, oh my God, I wish there was something that we can do, but we can't control nature. You know, it's like we just have to work around it.
Yeah.
So.
It honestly, we I think we wound up, I don't remember it exactly, but we waited and the rain dissipated eventually. And we were like, I guess we just wait. And we just kind of waited, and then we kind of rushed for a few other things, and we got it done. But it was just, sometimes you can't mess with Mother Nature, it just happens.
Have you guys watched that series, The Movies That Made Us, on Netflix?
No, I think I've heard of it though.
I've heard of
it. They went through like some really iconic films like Dirty Dancing and Die Hard, and one of them was Home Alone that they went through, and they talk about that they changed their entire production based on the shot of Kevin coming out of the house on Christmas morning when it was snowing, because the inside of the house is obviously not the interior that they shot. They built a whole house set in a pool. So they were like, they told everyone from the beginning, like when it snows in Chicago that day, doesn't matter what we have scheduled, we're going to shut everything down. We're going to go to that house and we're going to shoot that exterior scene. And I can't, the thought of like changing your whole schedule around just based on the weather, whether because you need it to do something or you need it to not do something, is so stressful to me. I can't imagine having to deal with that. That's insanity.
It is very stressful. Like on Nightmare Wakes, we had one scene that was dusk. I hate this word now, dusk, but we had to do this one scene over a course of like 4 to 5 days. We had to consistently go out every single day and add it in and get like a little snippet just so we can have that lighting just right. Like, and there was no way that I could have worked it around where it's like, dusk and dawn they're very similar, but we could not do that because of the schedule that we had and our call times and everything. And so every day, and it's not like crazy in terms of like stopping everything to go and shoot that, but yes, like weather and getting the perfect lighting is like, it can take days just to get one particular scene. And it was like every day we had to keep going out there and like, so I think that it's scary, but when you have the director, the AD, the DP, the production design team, and the producers coming together to really discuss and figure out how this is going to work and pan out, and if it's possible, it alleviates a lot of that stress, as long as a team we all figure it out and we know what we're preparing for. But it is very stress inducing.
Do you have a job? I mean, you said you've line produced, you've done that kind of thing, and AD. Do you have in particular that you like doing the most, like ADing, like your main focus, and do these time, or how do
is like the main focus? But I think with COVID, what I've noticed is that like a lot of filmmakers, because of all the time that we've had to sit and think with ourselves, we've kind of come to realizations of the things that we want to continue doing and the things that we want to maybe expand on. And I would say that, ADing is incredibly stressful, and like when I like sets, it's great. But then when I'm on shit show sets or on sets that it's just a lot of stress, I kind of have to sit back and think like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, what's my bigger purpose here? And I think with COVID, it sort of made me realize that I want to maybe get involved with more creative stuff, not so much, because ADing is logistical, it's organizational, it's just piecing things like a jigsaw puzzle together for the logistical, like to remove the logistical nightmares of set. But I don't have a creative input, and I thrive on that. Like I kind of, and I didn't realize that until COVID, where I was like, I really need to put in more creative input into stuff. And maybe that's being a creative producer, working directly with the director to kind of zone in on their script, and kind of, I want to say in how things could potentially be. And I don't get that when I'm ADing. It's like, I have to just shut the fuck up, and whatever comes up. I just need to schedule and make sure that we make our days. That's it. So.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes too, it's about finding the balance of like, am I doing enough work that, because obviously you want to do work and you want to pay the bills, So if ADing is your pay the bills work, and then you find other gigs where you're producing on a creative level and doing other creative things, it balances out. But you got to have a healthy balance, you know?
I agree. It's definitely having a healthy balance. It's very hard to have a healthy balance in the industry because, especially on the non-union level, like in the union, they care, but they have to care about people, and they give you the right rates that you need, and they make sure you're taken care of and get health insurance and get a lot of other shit. And in non-union, it's like there's sometimes this like attitude from people in the non-union world that really irritates the shit out of me, where you'll get onto a set and like they'll give you a very good rate for the day, but then there's other things on the set that end up not being so great. Meaning, like, I've been on like sets where it's like, we don't have a bathroom. These are basic fucking things. I should not have to be dealing with not having a bathroom on set. Like, women have periods, like, you know, like, I don't care who goes like, oh, that's icky to talk about. Like, women have periods, people have diarrhea, need to take a shit, and people need to pee, or they need to throw up, or they just need to check something down there.
I made
like,
a film shoot wait once because I was like, I have to go to the bathroom, and I had to like leave and go to a gas station to go to a bathroom because they didn't have one. And I was like, I don't care if you guys wait 20 minutes and I screw up your whole day. Like, you should have a bathroom. What the hell are you doing?
Thank you. And it's like, and it's this attitude of like, oh, you should be, you know, like, we're doing this set. I don't give a fuck about your set, and I don't give a fuck about what you're doing. Like, I need to, it's basic decency on a human level. But in this industry, sometimes you're met with this sort of like, well, if you don't want to deal with it, well, then screw you. Like, you know, and if that's the kind of production that you want to have, it like, and it's not to say that like, you know, on the productions that I've worked on that I've had, like, they were shitty people. They were really nice people, just because of budgeting, they weren't able to, but it's still such a huge pet peeve of mine, you know? And like, all of the people that I work with understood that. There are people that will be like, well, what do you want me to do? Get a fucking bathroom.
All right, well, we just disconnected, but we're back. And we were talking about sets that don't provide things like bathrooms, you know, essential needed things on a film set, or like food. Like, I've worked film sets where they're like, no, we're not doing lunch. It's like, how do you not do lunch? We're filming for 12 hours.
Yeah.
You know, I'm irritable after 20 minutes of not eating. Like, I'm like, I need something to snack on, you know?
I've never been on a set where they didn't, I mean, they may have offered shitty food, but it was still food, but never like, I would be like, what the hell? No fucking way. Because we work many hours. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
like,
I've worked on sets. I haven't worked on a set where they're just like, no, we're just going to keep going. But I've worked on sets where they're like, here's pizza. But then they're like, but keep working. Like, don't stop. But here's pizza. So I'm like eating pizza with grease, and it's gross. And I'm like also having to handle the camera, and I can't do that. So, you know, it's just like, oh, I guess I just can't eat this. And then I'm like pulling focus with like pizza in my mouth. You know, it doesn't make any sense. But you know, that's why your job is essential. And it's one of the jobs, like a camera assistant, that is often one of the first things to go when you're budgeting a small project, because you're like, I can't afford it. But, you know, it's like going to a restaurant and not being able to afford to tip. Like, don't go.
It's really ridiculous. I think that if like every set should have an AD, you need that person to manage the schedule and manage expectations throughout the day. To not have that, I mean, unless you have a director or a producing team that could kind of jump in and do that, those do exist. You just really got to be good at what you're doing and be able to multitask in that regard. But it should be completely and utterly separate, to give the director the time they need and to let production deal with their production duties, you know. And it's, yeah, no, I don't get it. And I do think that a lot of inexperienced directors or like production teams don't quite understand what an AD does sometimes, and or they expect the AD to kind of just babysit and do everything. And it's like, the AD, every department has help. The AD department, if a lot of times on like non-union shoots and stuff, you don't have a second or even a second on a feature, that's a different story. But even then, sometimes like when I did Nightmare Wakes, like I had like a second for a little while, but he was not he wasn't a seasoned second, you know. And so I still had to kind of take up certain things. But I would say that in general, it's fucking hard. And sometimes production's like, well, do this and do that. And well, it's like, well, can I get some fucking help? Like, like I can't do it all by myself. Like, so
it kind of creates a lot of those situations to create a scenario where someone says, all right, this has to get done. And you have to answer. There's like no other answer, but that's not my job. But as soon as you say those words, someone goes, well, then don't work here. Get the fuck out. And it's like, but it's not in my job description. I don't know how to properly say that in another way. Like I've been asked to like help with scheduling, and I'm like, I'm the camera assistant. That makes no sense. And it's like, you need to hire a whole nother person for there's at least needs to be on almost every film set, a logistics person. No matter what title you want to give them, you want to make them a producer, you want to make them an AD, you want to make them anything. There just needs to be a person who's like, I'm going to file the permits and handle the paperwork and just keep everyone on schedule. And that's just, if you have a person who's like also directing the movie and flexing their creative muscles, the idea of like figuring out where everyone's going to park in the middle of the day just falls short. And then that creates issues. So, I mean, there just needs to be somebody on set handling logistics always.
Yeah, I mean, I think on smaller sets, like if you have like a seasoned, like I've done AD and PMing, like on a set, but then when I'm ADing on the set, it's like, I need somebody else to take up PM duties. I cannot do both. And so you definitely, you need a logistical person. It makes no sense. Cause like with ADing, it's like, as an AD, I don't do permits. Like that's a PM production coordinator kind of thing. But you need to have those separations, because I've been on like, I was in a short before where they were like trying to schedule PA pickups for like, a day or so before the actual like principal photography. And I was like, that's not my job. Like, it's not my job to schedule out when the PAs are supposed to be picking up the truck, when they're supposed to go to, Wits End, when they're supposed to go down to like Panavision. It's not my business to be doing that. That's all production. And so sometimes people don't understand that. But again, those are like non-union sets with people that are less experienced. On experienced sets, everybody knows those distinctions. And it's like, they would never, ever ask an AD to be like, can you do the permitting? Because the AD would be like, no, not my job.
Rightfully so. Yeah. So let's talk about your film choice to discuss on this podcast, because
you seem so excited about it.
It's not that I'm not excited, but I have thoughts on this movie. We're talking about The Neon Demon, and this movie. When did this movie come out?
2016.
2016. So it's not super old. It's been around. I have a tab up here. Yep, 2016. Directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Winding Refn.
Yes. He also directed Drive. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely get that vibe from the lighting and like the look of it. Which the whole movie, I was like, I'm liking this vibe. I'm liking the vibe of the film. It was really slow, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was very bored for a good portion of the film, because I was sitting there going, when is something gonna happen? And then Keanu Reeves was there, and I was like, okay, getting interesting. And then he wound up being this like weird side character, and it was cool. I liked it, but there was so much drawing it out and slow. And then all of a sudden this movie just whacks you in the head with a bat. And you're just like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Because I felt like for about like an hour of this hour and a half movie, I was like, all right, what's going to happen? Waiting. And then it just hits you over the head with a bat.
Yeah.
Why'd you pick it?
Okay, to speak on all those points. So Neon Demon, I think one of the things that I absolutely love about it is it's just visually stunning for me. It's just a visual delight in many, many, many regards. Like if I was a DP or a director, that's exactly how I would like to be shooting my films and stuff, because it's just, obviously you can't do it for all films, but just there was just a lot of beautiful composition and the color palettes and some of the symbolism that was in there, like the triangles and stuff like that, and just kind of the reflection of mirror. It was, for me, on that regard, I think in one way I understand people's sort of hesitation with the film because it is sort of like a slow kind of burn, but it really hits you over the head because I don't particularly like the ending. I think the ending really fucked it up for me because I was like, what the fuck is happening here, bro? And I kind of was annoyed because I always feel like male directors, whenever they try to use the theme of witches, like the coven, it's always like a bunch of girls naked, touching each other, touching their titties, touching their vag, getting all bloodied and shit. And it's like, I know a couple of Wiccans, they don't do this shit. So it's like, I feel like it's like this over sexualization that did not need to be a part of the film, and it could have been totally redirected in many ways. And I'm not a fan of that. I'm also not a fan of him sticking in Ruby fucking a corpse. It's like, what the hell was the point of that? It was just really odd. However,
spoiler alert to anybody that hasn't seen the movie yet, this is all going to be like, what? Until you see the movie. And for 45 minutes, you're still going to be like, all right, I haven't seen any of the shit they're talking about. And then it just happens. So go watch it and then come back to this point right now.
However, I would say that I think as a woman, I connected to it because the neon demon is supposed to be a reflection of Jessie, the character. She turns into a neon demon, like her demise, like this young, naive, girl that ends up getting this big opportunity to become a model. And then she pretty much gets over sexualized and eaten alive like a fucking vulture by the people that are supposed to be her friends. And all they want from her is her virgin beauty and blood, you know what I mean? To kind of rejuvenate themselves because they're so old.
When you say eaten alive, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
It's not figurative. They eat a bitch. They eat her. Like
yes, but they eat her alive, but I feel like it's deeper than that. Like, I don't think it's just kind of like this zombie-esque thing where they just need to eat her. I feel like there's a big symbolic thing that goes into that because, at the very end when Gigi's like, I need to get her the fuck out of me. It's like this concept of, if you kind of go into the depths of it, of this is what you want and this is what you asked for. And sometimes the things that you want the most and things that you think that you're gonna be happy with are the very fucking things that you don't fucking want, that are going to completely unravel you as a person. And so those characters were, they were hungry for her youth and hungry for her, the attention that she was getting. And then when one of them got it, she couldn't take it. And so it's like that demon inside of herself was kind of, eating her alive because that's not part of who her dynamic is. And so if you kind of look deeper into it, for me, there were very deep, symbolic understanding outside of the coven and the evil eye of Lucifer and all that shit, blah, blah, blah. Outside of that, the industry itself, the neon demon for me is not just about beauty industry. It's about, you can apply the neon demon to anything. You can apply it to money, you can apply it to beauty, you can apply it to sex, you can apply it to any vice that we as human beings get into. If you're with the wrong people in the wrong environment, with the wrong mindset that's not vibrating from a higher spiritual plane and frequency, you will find yourself in demonic fucking spaces. Not kind of type of shit, but literally you will fuck your entire life up and your future if you keep doing things that are not in alignment with who you are as a fucking person, because you're just trying to be seen, or you're trying to be doing things that have nothing to do with your actual enlightenment. So that's kind of how I took the film and why I like it.
Interesting. And that's definitely the path I thought the film was going on. It was about this girl who was coming to the city, and I thought the film was about LA changing her. And then it was like, nah, psych, we gotcha. Yeah. Tricked into this, and then they just start throwing her into pools and stuff. It was just ridiculous. I liked the film. It just threw me off. It just, I didn't even know how to respond to it. And I think I texted Victoria. What did I say to you, Victoria, when I texted you?
You said, this is taking a wild turn, is what you texted me.
And then you texted me back when I know the part you got up to when you texted me back, and you said, what am I even watching? Because you were just thrown off. But it,
well, I will say I we had watched Drive before, and someone else had suggested it on the podcast, and I do think this director has a very specific look and feel that permeates through all of his films. It was visually stunning, and something that I really appreciate about this film and Drive, and I'm assuming probably is something that he does in a lot of his films, is the dialogue is very tight. It's not used a lot. There is really not a lot of talking. And it's the same with the music. The music is very intentional of when it's there and when it's not. And I was just over the holidays, I watched The Holiday, and that movie, that soundtrack is so manipulative in how it tries to make you feel things in certain moments. And this film doesn't do that. The soundtrack is very purposeful, and it's only there in certain situations. And I really do appreciate that. I completely agree with you on the ending, took this insane turn. And it almost felt to me like at points that he was trying to do what Black Swan did with like the idea of looking in yourself and finding the evil within yourself and how you try and put that on other people, but it's actually you and it's a reflection of you and what the energy is that you're bringing into it. I got really thrown off by the eyeball and that threw me for a loop. And also something else that I didn't see in Drive that I saw in this film is that there are extraneous characters that were not needed. We could have gone through the whole film without them. And I think it's a lot of the male characters. Like Keanu Reeves' character was cool, but was he really necessary? Did you need to see him the whole time, or just could he have been a presence that was there that she referenced? Same with the boy that was falling in love with her. I forgot about him by the end of the film. And I don't know if that was intentional or what the point of that was. But
maybe just to ground those characters, because if you just have it all be about this girl who's just living this weird new life in LA and then a bunch of witches kill her, it kind of just makes it more like having those characters shows that there's like real people around as well, like that aren't trying to just be a part of a witch coven and murder you. Like Christina Hendricks's character, I like that she was barely in it, but she walked out of the room and she saw these other models and she goes, "You can go." And I was just like, that's the most LA model type of, like, that's exactly what I expect it is. So it was like, I guess those characters' purpose might have been to like ground it in reality a little bit more, so that you think, oh, there's a shitty landlord who is trying to bill you for something that's not really your fault. Like, we've all kind of been there. So we can all relate to this crazy person who is now losing her mind in LA, who does her makeup up and stands over a empty pool, just telling everybody, I'm better than you. That's what she was saying. And she's totally at that point, I think, lost it and become the neon demon or become that inner reflection of herself. And, if any of my inner reflections looked like Natalie Portman or Mila Kunis, I would try to do it too. But,
Well, I feel like with this film too, it wouldn't be as visually stunning if this director hadn't done it. I mean, obviously he's got a very specific look and a feel, and it is very LA. A lot of his films are LA oriented, and it's undeniable that is the feel. But I felt like it was a film that focused on women, that was made by a person who doesn't like women very much. I got that feeling a lot through it.
That's true. All the women in this movie were not good people. There was not one woman, like either they're witches, literally witches that are cannibals and eating people and killing people, or they're this new innocent girl that by the end of the movie, she's a total narcissist and she's gone a little crazy. Or they're like evil modeling agents that are like ruining people's dreams on a whim. That's literally the only other woman that there's no one else with lines, I think, in the whole movie.
Well, it wasn't even necessarily like Christina Hendricks was like an evil woman or anything like that. And I think there was, obviously it was more grounded in reality in the beginning of the film. But I'm interested in like what this film that goes from reality into this kind of like occult crazy twist would have been like told through a female lens rather than a male lens, especially when you're talking about an industry, especially when we're talking about like the beauty industry in and of itself. when it does, losing the word that I'm thinking of, but the way that it treats women and it makes them objects, and how would that have been told through a female lens, I think would have been interesting. But obviously then it wouldn't be this film, because this filmmaker has such a very specific look and feel, and what he brings to the table is very distinct in who he is.
Well,
I'm sorry, Lena, you were trying to say something.
Just based on the looks, the cinematographer is named Sasha Breyer. Natasha Breyer. So female lens technically, but that's just the visuals.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Kind of like I want to kind of backtrack to like some of your points. Like, I guess the first thing that I want to say that's coming up for me is what you mentioned, Victoria, of like how things were done purposefully at like certain moments to show specific transitions. I mean, even the first shot of the film is like a foreshadowing of where she's going to be at the end, and you don't realize it because like you're seeing this like neon beautiful kind of shoot, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Who is this woman? Why is she dead? Like, this is really beautiful. And then like the dolly track back or whatever, and then boom, like we realize that she is this model or whatever, and then like, you know, she ends up pretty much dying at the very end or whatever. And so I feel like even in terms of music, like the moment where like they end up in like this like I think it was the club, or it was like in some, I forget where, but like there was like the strobing and you're just seeing their faces, and like that really, like, I downloaded like the Neon Demon soundtrack because I was like, this fucking shit is dope, and all you hear is that like duka 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 music, and you're like, man, this is like fucking great. Like it really gets you kind of into this like very eerie kind of weird, like what the fuck is going on place. And so he did that very well. Even like after she has like a fashion shoot and she's kind of like kissing her own reflection, she comes out a totally different person. The color palettes are much more different. She's more mature, you know, she's a different kind of person. She's no longer this like naive, like 16-year-old, she's in it. And I think that in relation to, would this have been different if a woman would have been doing this? I think so, because again, like the over-sexualization of it would not have been there. I do think that the female characters are all pretty despicable, but I think that, and I'm not trying to speak for the director, but I kind of maybe feel like maybe it's not so much the women being women, maybe it's his symbolic view on certain aspects of the industry, and the women take up that aura. It's not so much the women, it's kind of like, you know, because women are bombarded with a lot of crap all the time. Our hair, our face, our lipstick, our bodies, our ass is too flat, too fucking big, our tits are too small, too fucking big, our nose is too big, too small, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like in an industry like that, where your only way of making money is how you look, that is your value that is placed on you, that is the only thing that matters, and that is the only thing that's going to actually get you to where you need to be seen and heard and appreciated, then I can understand why those women would become these like, because it's kind of, I feel like as a man, he may have gone to the typical trope of like, women are catty, women don't get along with each other, women are very against each other. And I don't think a woman would have done that. I think a woman would have seen it beyond that, because there is power in female relationships. And it's not just all this catty shit. Like women need other women. And so even in those worlds where it's so cutthroat, you need people that are going to understand you. And when it turns into this very cutthroat thing, it kind of just reminds me of it's a masculine energy that he did place over it, that I see in other masculine movies where like men in groups fuck each other over for money, for women, and for power. Women, on the other hand, it's kind of like putting the same lens on that, but I don't know if it always necessarily lands, because
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's hard to, you know, we're in a very heightened consciousness right now, as in who's telling what stories. You know, a man telling a story from a female's point of view, someone who's not of color telling stories for people of color. And I think it's, you know, it's very clear when someone is being empathetic towards the lens that they're trying to put on someone else's story. And I think in a lot of ways, in this particular instance, he missed the mark a little bit in there's multifacets to how women deal with each other in this industry. Yes, a lot of times it can be the catty thing. But there's so much more to it. And he did miss that mark just a little bit in this film. But again, it is so visually stunning. Whoever that DP is, I could watch her work all day. Literally, I could at the end when they just had like the shot of like the sand on the beach, I was like, okay, I'll sit here and watch this for 20 minutes. Like, I'm fine with that.
Even the credits, I was watching the credits at the end, and they had all these really crazy images in the credits that had nothing to do with anything, but it was just like a model in all green makeup, and then sparks were hitting her in the face, and they were all bouncing off and dancing around the screen while the credits were rolling. Everything was visually stunning, and the visuals told a story, which is important too. Not only was it just cool to look at, but like that scene you were talking about with the party, with the flashing. First of all, don't watch this if you have epilepsy, because you're done. It's over.
I did have to like do this for a little bit. I was like,
it got to the point where it was like, this is hurting my eyes, but I want to go to that party so bad because it looked so cool. Everything's flashing and you're only getting glimpses and moments, but you can still see these really delicate interactions between all the different characters where they're looking at each other, and you're getting different, like you're building story with almost nothing happening, and the visuals played into that in a big way. So that was really cool too. So credit to the cinematographer, Natasha Breyer, for that one. And I'm sure too that the director was equally involved in that kind of stuff too, because he has that same look in his films, but not the same cinematographer from Drive or from the other films. So it might not necessarily be just one person doing the whole thing. It's always a team effort.
Yeah. I mean, visually, like there were just shots in there, like when she comes out and like she's by herself and she's backlit, and it's just that triangle that's behind her. I mean, it's just, there are moments in there that are, even when, again, the camera, like, dollies back or whatever, and like it's, you see her, but then you see like the room filled with like all these models, and everybody just kind of sitting in like their own, like, it's just the way everything was, like the composition, how everything was just kind of like, the frame was alive with so much for you to get, like symbolically and just visually, that I think that's what sort of pulled me into the movie more than the story. It was the visual, because I was like, this is just so visually like up my fucking alley of crap, that like I love this. I love this, even if the story definitely falls short at the end, and you're like, what the fuck just happened here? But yeah.
I don't know if the story, I don't know if it fell short for me, or if it was just two different stories that I don't know if they meshed too well. Like I want to see more of this witch coven. It sounds cool, like expand that plot, but now you need a whole nother movie just for that. I feel like the movie could have ended right after they killed her, and you don't really reveal that they like ate her body and they're like witches and they're in this coven or anything. You could have ended the movie right there and just been like, oh, it's kind of, then the debate would be about, is it her fault because she turned into this neon demon and then these girls just like turned against her? Now it's like, oh, they're witches, they're just doing witch shit, so it kind of diminishes that whole buildup for that neon demon within her.
Well, I also wonder though, if like a second viewing where a little more about what's coming, if there is a little more throughout, because obviously I've only watched it once, but I wonder if there's more like breadcrumbs leading up to it that show that there is this coming, there's something coming down the line that maybe I missed on my first viewing.
Right.
Because it is a lot about the visuals, and there is so much going on in every single frame that maybe there was some stuff that I missed. I think one of my favorite shots in the whole thing was when she went in for that photo shoot where she had the gold put on her. Before that, when he walked her from the side after she got her makeup done into the middle, and it literally looked like they walked into a blank void because of where the camera was, how so much of the visuals on this were everything was smooth. There really wasn't any like handheld camera work. It was all very still, very slow and purposeful and cold almost, to kind of reflect the world that they're in. And I think that was an extremely smart choice in representing this world that they're in, this like pristine, clean, almost like sterile. There's no empathy here in this world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think to go back to what you're saying in terms of like, did I miss something that would have kind of foreshadowed that like there's some kind of witchy kind of stuff going on. There's like, I think that like I had like looked up some kind of like analysis of the film, and like there were certain things that I also like when I listened to the analysis, I was like, oh shit, like I didn't remember that or whatever. It didn't dawn on me, like when she comes back into the apartment and like the wild cat is there, that's like, it's this surreal kind of thing where like The Craft, like the witch can from afar do something to alarm you. And it's like, that was that first instant. For most people, it's like, oh, where the fuck did the wild cat come from? And then it's also like, oh shit, maybe it's the witches putting that in there to scare her off. And then even when she has a dream of Keanu Reeves, like sticking the knife down her throat. And then it's like, she, after that, gets so scared and she goes right to the witches. It's almost like they've been slowly but surely trying to get her in without us really realizing and thinking that it's just like, oh, that's just the person that she goes to now. Like the witches knew. The witches understood that she was the perfect person to do that with. And so it's kind of like, it's very subtle. And then it just, it hits you where it's like, oh shit, they consumed her body. And then
because that's the way to do it too. You say, oh, you live here? Cool, you can't anymore because there's a fucking tiger in your room. Oh, there's the guy who gets the tiger out of your room. He's sticking a knife down your throat. So they're like pulling all the safety nets away. And maybe that's the purpose of Keanu Reeves' character. He was kind of the weird safety net that, you know, he was just kind of a dirtbag landlord in this Fleabag motel, you know? But even just for her, this young, naive girl who just moved to LA, these like safety nets were all getting pulled away, and it led her straight to the witches. Like she didn't know anybody else too, which I don't know. I feel like if anybody was, you know, if I got my makeup done as a girl and walked on set and then this guy was like, this is a closed set, I'd be like, no, I want my friends to stay here. Like, I don't trust you. I don't know you, sir. And then he pulls out a gold paint bucket. I'd be like, nah, I'm good.
Right. But I think that that's also a completely different, like we could go into the minutia of like what it's like to be a young woman alone and being afraid of multiple things, not just, you know, this is really uncomfortable. Like you could see the fear in her face, but there's also the whole, like, am I in more danger if I say no? Am I in more danger if I leave? That was a whole bunch of other level of stuff that was going on that I knew, like my husband sitting next to me was not understanding. Like he was uncomfortable with certain parts, but I know that like he didn't understand why I was as uncomfortable with certain things in the film that I was uncomfortable with. And that's a whole other level of shit. Yes,
as I agree with you 100%. Like as a woman, like you as a grown man can sit and say like, yeah, like if I had, and I totally agree with you in the regard of like as an older woman, you'd be like, no, fuck you, I'm not doing that. But when you're a young girl and you're super impressionable and like you're uncomfortable with your own body and you're still coming to, you didn't know that you held such power or whatever, and to be with like a powerful man who could in fact like do something for your career, it puts you into a very, very bad place. And like even women who have not been around powerful men, like if you as a woman have been around a man and you just kind of, saying no could actually be worse than actually agreeing. And so yeah, and I think only women or like individuals who've had to kind of go through those sorts of like situations will understand how deep that actually runs and how uncomfortable it could definitely make, especially looking at it, because you see it and you just hear it like, and you're like, oh my God, no, run, get the fuck out of there, So,
and I think the original story was written by the director, but the screenplay was co-written by him and two women. And I think all of those influences definitely came from the women. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I have to assume that they came from the women that were a part of co-writing the screenplay, and there was so much of that going on throughout the whole thing. And I was like, I need to like watch Scrubs or something dumb. Like I need to watch something afterwards.
You gotta find that balance. You gotta watch this movie and then watch like The Office, like a silly comedy. I think I hopped on a video game after and I was like, this is too violent. I need to like turn my brain off. But yeah, this is a wild movie. I highly recommend people check it out because it's brought up a lot of different things that we've been talking about it for 40 minutes now. But it's definitely worth a watch. It's on Amazon right now. Check it out. Lena, thank you for the suggestion.
Absolutely.
This movie's going to haunt my dreams for a couple of years. And yes, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. It was great learning more about you and what you're all about. And we look forward to seeing more stuff from you, more projects.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we can check out your film right now on Shudder. Check out the horror film.
Yep. Nightmare Wakes on Shudder. Check it out, y'all.
Hey guys, so the goal of the Astoria Filmmakers Club is to help filmmakers in the area produce their own original work and make films that we can all enjoy. The best way to show support of this is to make a donation, big or small, to the club.
Your donations will go directly towards the club, this podcast, and any future productions that the AFC takes on.
Just scan the QR code below, and it will bring you directly to the club's official Venmo page. You can make any size donation you want, and we would really appreciate it. It will go directly towards us and towards members of the club, and they can make cool videos and content and films, and we just love your support. Please show your support and make a donation today.
Our day player, Lena Lansky. Thank you again, Lena, for coming on the podcast. And Victoria, honest thoughts here on the Neon Demon. What we spoke about it pretty extensively with Lena.
We did.
But this movie's wild, and we could probably talk about it for another hour. But
we could continue for an hour. I think just honest final thoughts on the film. I think that I understand what he was trying to do with the film. I think that it's kind of a step down from something like Drive, where every character was needed and specific. Yes, the script was tight. Yes, the cinematography was amazing. Yes, the very intentional choices of the music. That was great. That was great use of your resources. But at the same time, it felt a little masturbatory on his end of like, look at what a great filmmaker I am. And I personally was not really a fan of like the extremely excessively slow burn up until that whacking you over the head with that ending. I don't know if on another watch, like Lena was talking about, that might make you appreciate that a little more. But for first watch through, that's my feeling, is it was a film that missed the mark in some places. Some things were like really super on point, but some things were not.
Yeah, that's what it was for me too. It was an hour or so of slow burn with a few moments of like, what's going on? I'm interested. Like the party scene was all these crazy strobe lights was cool. That was just cool to watch. And then Keanu Reeves shows up, and that's a little moment because everybody knows Keanu Reeves. Christina Hendricks shows up. That's another cool moment because it's another big actor that we all know. A fucking wildcat jumps into her room. So there's these moments that kind of like break up the slow burn, but it's such a slow burn. It's like being on a roller coaster that's just going up, going up, going up.
Well, and I felt like with those slow burn moments, like when you had those like injection of those random things where I was watching with my husband and we're sitting there going, what the fuck is happening in this? And not in a like, I can't wait to see what comes next. And I'm still not grasping what the point of this is, kind of what the fuck is going
I was
on.
the same way. I was sitting there going, why am I watching this? What's going on? And then all of a sudden it hits you over the head with a bat. I keep saying that, but like it really, it's really the best way to describe it because it comes out of nowhere. It's the most left field. It's a little bit of an M. Night Shyamalan twist,
Yeah, but better executed than most of his twists.
Probably. But I mean, it was like, it's like going up that roller coaster so slow, and then all of a sudden, instead of just going downhill on the roller coaster, you just shoot into space, never to be heard of again.
Yeah.
And it was just too much after such a slow burn. You know, it was too much of a twist after a slow burn.
Yes, but at the same time, it's a film that we literally could talk about for hours. So
true.
Who gets the last laugh here?
If you had to give this a rating out of 10, what would you do? We normally don't do number ratings.
No, we don't.
But like, honestly, I wouldn't. It's hard to describe this movie to people because the amount we talk about it and the amount we've deep dived into it, you would think that I'm like the biggest fan of this movie. But to be honest, I was like, eh.
I would say like 6.5.
Yeah, 6 or 7. If I had to rate it on a number scale, you know, but only because I feel like the pacing was really off. The story was cool. The idea of the story was even cool, but just the pacing threw off the whole story for me because it was just so slow and then too fast.
Right. Well, and again, I really feel like it was look what a great filmmaker I am for like most of the time, instead of like letting your story talk for you and prove what a great filmmaker you are. You know, like no matter what, at the end of the day, the story is what matters. It really, that's the basis of the whole thing. And he didn't let the story, I mean, I think it's an interesting story. It's not a bad story, but there was so much of like, I'm this fantastic filmmaker. Look at my visual choices. And yes, they're stunning. But I need more than that.
Yeah. I think because we sat in those moments for way too long, we were like, all right, come on, let's go. Move along, please.
And there is something to be said for a film that doesn't adhere to the typical, you know, the world has such a short attention span, and like, you know, for kind of busting out of that norm, but this was too much.
Yeah.
It was way too much.
I probably would say that a lot of people might agree with us on this because while it did well, it received awards and it got notoriety, it had a budget of $7 million, which is almost nothing. And when you think about it, because of how simple this movie was and how slow it took every little moment, a lot of that money probably went to paying the actors and having the equipment and just like setting up these crazy shots.
Well, and getting people like Keanu Reeves and Christina Hendricks for.
That's probably half the budget. It's just them two and Elle Fanning.
Well, for those side roles. I mean, to be fair, like Jenna Malone is a pretty well-known name, and was at the time that she did the film. Like she's been acting since she was a kid, so she's well known. And Elle Fanning, she as well has been acting since she was a child and has a great reputation. So like, you know,
I'm honestly surprised that the budget's only $7 million for the film, but box office it only made 3.4 million. So that's made back half the money, not even. Yeah. So that's a failure. That's a fail. Budget, at least budget wise. Honestly, my biggest complaint is the pacing for this movie. It's still a good movie. It's still definitely worth a watch, even just to like I'm not condoning this. I'm not condoning doing drugs, but get high and watch this movie because you will trip balls. Yeah, I was tripping and I was stone cold sober.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy film.
Just wild visually.
For the ladies listening, there was some triggering things in there, so just be aware of that.
Yes, ladies, trigger warning, and then epilepsy trigger warning. If you have epilepsy,
you don't know.
Yeah, sure. And then just epilepsy, don't watch this movie.
Yeah,
because there's just so much stark lighting and flashes. I don't even know if I saw a warning about it beforehand. Usually they do like a seizure warning, but
they do that in like live performances. I don't think I've ever seen that in a filmed performance. I did see an epileptic warning when I watched the National Theatre in London filmed their production of Frankenstein with Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller, and there's some lighting effects that they used in that. So when I went to a movie theater to watch it, they had those up. But I think in general, in regular films, I've never seen especially like maybe at a movie theater you might see that, but I don't know if you would ever get that at like a streamed thing. You know, like I don't know if there would be a warning that flashes up ahead of time, like epileptic, watch out. Like
probably should, because that scene came out of nowhere and it was just like, this scene's gonna happen. Flash, 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 flash. It was pretty hard.
Yeah.
But overall, I like the movie. I want people to watch it for themselves, and I want people to form their own opinions. And I want them to comment on this video and tell us why we're wrong. Prove me wrong, bro. or lady. Prove me wrong.
Human.
Yeah, human. Prove me wrong and explain why you like this movie more than I do. It was good though. I liked it. It just wasn't, it didn't blow my mind. I think Drive is a superior movie for sure.
I think the story of Drive was stronger, and I think that's why.
Yeah. Do you think if Drive had the same more stark visuals and the same story, it would be more impactful, or vice versa?
Well, I think the visuals were perfect for the world that he was creating. He's talking about the fashion industry and how sterile and edgy and you know, stark that alone can be, whereas Drive was dealing with, you know, a world that wasn't necessarily like, you're talking about high-end fashion versus a world of crime. So, you know, I think the tone and the images and all of that were perfectly appropriate for the films that they were. I don't think that they would have needed to adjust anything that way. I think that's something that this film got perfectly.
I agree with that. I also think they picked the perfect person to be the creepy photographer. Just the creepiest looking man on the planet.
Right? Him and then that stupid fashion designer. The acting in this was perfect. It was enough.
Fashion designer. Who was the fashion designer? Who am I thinking?
Oh, I looked him up last night. I think he's actually uncredited in the film. But
yes, I know who you're talking about. I was watching him the whole time, and all I could think of was the guy from Iron Man 2. I forget his name. What's his name? He played Army Hammer, not Army Hammer.
Army Hammer's creepy enough. That's
enough cannibals. All right, we got enough cannibals in one thing. Let's keep no more cannibals in this fucking show. No, because you know what it was? In Iron Man 2, the guy had Hammer Industries was the name of it. So his name is still something Hammer. That's why
Army
I got
Hammer.
confused.
Your brain
Sam
went
Rockwell.
cannibal.
Sam Rockwell could have been interchangeable for that part.
Yeah, he did.
100%.
Yeah.
And the photographer's name was Desmond Harrington, who's been in a bunch of stuff, and he's always like terrifying looking.
He is a terrifying dude.
He looks scary. Like if that dude mugged me, I'd be like, take whatever.
Yeah.
Take my money, bro. You're gonna murder me. He was in Dexter. That's all you need to say. He was in Dexter.
He's leaning into his type very well.
Yes.
I'm sure he's probably like this lovely human being too. Like he's just a big teddy bear in real life.
I hope he watches this podcast and goes, fuck those guys. I'm such a nice dude. You know, I'm sure he's fine. But you know, check out The Neon Demon. I watched it on Amazon. You can watch it.
Yep.
Go for it. Well, guys, thank you again for tuning into the AFC podcast. Again, you can like us, comment, subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, or of course, you know, see us on YouTube, the preferred method. We're so lovely. Look at us. Look at us.
We're just the loveliest.
Perfect.
It's just so perfect.
Yeah.
And thank you to our day player, Lena Lansky, for hopping on and talking to us about all the awesome stuff that she's doing into the industry. Make sure to check out A Nightmare Wakes on Shudder. It's available now. And also thank you to her for suggesting The Neon Demon, something I probably would not have watched otherwise.
Yes, thank you guys again. I'm Jim Galizia.
I'm Victoria Fragnito. We'll catch you next time.